My company fired me and called me a failure, but they had no idea that years earlier I had built a system that their entire business could not operate without. My company fired me and called me a failure. They believed I was just an employee who had fallen behind with time, but they had no idea that I had quietly built a system that their entire business could not function without for even a single day. And when the truth finally came out, the same people who questioned my abilities were looking at me for the solution. When I look back at that moment now, I don't feel anger. I don't feel the need for revenge. I only feel a quiet sense of peace because life showed me a truth I might never have understood otherwise. Some people don't recognize your value until you are no longer standing beside them. That day happened a long time ago, but some memories never fade. The conference room, the long glass table, the silent faces around me, and the moment when I was told that I had failed. I had spent almost 16 years with that company. When I first joined, it was a small organization with only a few employees, limited resources, and a huge dream. I gave some of the best years of my life to that place. I remember the nights when everyone else had gone home and I stayed under the office lights solving problems. I remember arriving early with my coffee, preparing everything before the workday even began. I never saw myself as just another employee. I was part of the team that watched the company grow, brought in new clients, solved difficult problems, and created systems that became the foundation of the business. But there is a quiet truth about success. When everything is running smoothly, people often forget who worked behind the scenes to keep it that way. My life was never only about work. I was a mother, a wife, and an ordinary American woman who considered Sunday Costco trips a family tradition, who smiled through Thanksgiving dinners even when I was exhausted inside, who attended PTA meetings trying to be the perfect mom, and who sometimes looked at 401k accounts and retirement plans wondering if we were so focused on securing the future that we forgot to appreciate the present. So I always gave my best. My CEO, Alan, was the first person who recognized my abilities. He knew how many important decisions I had made during the company's hardest moments. He used to say, "You are the person who sees problems before they happen." But time changes everything. New leadership arrived, new people joined, and slowly my experience stopped being viewed as strength and started being treated as outdated thinking. That day started like any other day. It was a quarterly meeting. We were discussing future plans and upcoming goals. Then Alan suddenly closed his folder and looked at me. "We need to make some changes." I stayed silent. Then he started reviewing my work. He said my approach no longer matched the company's speed, that I was not adapting to new methods, and that perhaps someone else could make faster decisions. I listened to everything. Then he said, "We don't think your performance is where the company needs it to be anymore." The room became silent. Then came the words that made everything clear. "We're letting you go." They thought I was a failure. They believed I would break down, question their decision, or defend myself emotionally. But I didn't. I collected my things, looked at my desk one last time, and quietly walked away. Because there was one thing they didn't know. I had a secret. Years earlier, when the company was growing rapidly, I had built an internal automation system. It connected different departments, managed critical data, and simplified processes that the daily operations depended on. I never presented it as my personal achievement, because my goal was never recognition. My goal was solving problems. But I kept complete documentation and the system architecture safely stored. I knew that one day its importance would be understood. A few weeks later, that day arrived. The company's system suddenly started facing major issues. Reports contained errors, data flow between departments stopped working, and several important operations were affected. The people who thought I was a failure were now facing a problem nobody knew how to solve. Then I received an email. From Alan. "We need to talk." I stared at that message for a long time. The old version of me might have thought, now they finally understand my value. Now they need me. But I had changed. I didn't go back to prove anyone wrong. I went back to present the truth. I returned to the office. The same place, the same people, but the atmosphere was completely different. I showed them the system, its complete structure, its solutions, and the path that could stabilize the company again. The room became silent. Because everyone knew that the very thing they had never considered important was now the thing that could save the business. Alan quietly asked, "When did you build all of this?" I calmly answered, "While I was doing my job." I didn't embarrass anyone. I didn't blame anyone. Because my goal was never revenge. My goal was simply to remember that my value could never be reduced by someone else's decision. A few months later, I left the company. But this time it was my choice. I started a new chapter of my life somewhere my ideas, experience, and hard work truly mattered. When I look back today, I don't feel happy that they struggled. I feel peace because I never lost myself. I learned that the greatest response is not always loud. Sometimes the work created quietly speaks for itself when the right moment arrives. My revenge was patience, preparation, and the belief that a person's true value becomes visible when someone makes the mistake of underestimating them. Today my life is peaceful. I no longer need to prove anything to anyone. Because in the end, the greatest success is not when people finally recognize your strength. The greatest success is when you never forget your own strength. If this story inspired you to believe in your own abilities and never let others define your worth, please like this video and subscribe for more powerful and emotional stories. Thank you so much for watching and spending your valuable time with us. Your support means a lot and helps us continue bringing inspiring stories that leave a lasting impact.